Okay. Hi. I'm going to wait for just a second here to let people show up. Okay. There's at least one person there, and just give me a little signal. There's about 10-second delay here, so if I look like I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm doing because it's a 10-second delay. So just let me know if you've got audio and that type of thing. If you don't, let me know. I'll try to take some questions tonight. I had a lot of plans about what I was going to do tonight. And then I got emails, texts, messages, phone calls from some people in Israel about the things that are going on there right now. So my best laid plans got set aside. So I'm going to move this back just a little bit. For some reason, the lighting has changed in my green screen. I don't know why. And so I'm getting this green tint in my hair. You see, tonight I'm doing this from my virtual prison here in Galena, Ohio. Boy. There's a lot of going on. I don't even really know where to begin. And now I see my. Okay, can you hear me now? No, I didn't hit a mute button. My thing went off, and I did nothing to it. So now I'm getting tremendous feedback. You can hear me? Can I sign for us? No, I don't do. Trying. I have a great niece who's unfortunately deaf, and I'm going to try to learn some sign language. So let's just talk about a few things that are going on. My best laid plans. Again, I was on a long phone call with somebody in Israel, and it just did not. It just took up a lot more time than I thought. You may find it hard to believe that I talk for a long time on the phone at times, but there's a lot going on. So I don't know where to begin. Let's start with the most recent news. And the most recent news is this, that Trump has been indicted. That's just happened. And then I got a bunch of phone calls about that. But anyway, if you're having audio problems, let me know. I have no idea what happened here. Boy, oh boy, this is so frustrating. So Trump got indicted. I think the case is bogus. The the case is very weak. But the one thing you need to understand, I was just talking to a friend of mine who's much more politically connected than I am. They're never going to let Trump alone, ever. It's just not going to stop. And whether you like Trump or not, I see a lot of parallels about what's going on between Trump and then what's going on with Netanyahu and the government in Israel. And believe me, I talk to people, I have friends on both sides of the issue in Israel, and they are just very anti-Netanyahu. I think part of the problem with Netanyahu, I think he got elected about 30 years ago for the first time, almost 30 years ago. And then he was out for a while, and then he came back. And I think his problem has been that he's not helped someone come in to succeed him in leadership. And he's hanging on. And I think he could go away. I think he could go away and make millions of dollars, but he decides to stay. So let me just make a few comments about what's going on with the Trump. I'll do this. I'll share a screen here. So, and then you don't have to look at me as much. So, a couple things going on in Israel. There is this controversy over judicial reform. Now, my idea is that the judicial reform that they're seeking in Israel is something people have sought for decades. There was a Supreme Court justice named Barak who a few years ago decided that the Supreme Court could act on a test of reasonableness. Israel does not have a constitution, and they're not organized the way we are. They're a parliamentary system. They have one legislative body, unlike the United States and even the UK, which has two legislative bodies. And the genius of the way people set up things here in the United States, and what's lasted for quite a while, but it's being torn down now, in my opinion, was that there's checks and balances. And in Israel, almost everything relies on the parliament. They put in I don't even know if they had a Supreme Court for a while, but the Supreme Court came in and they have a selection process. So there's 9 people on the committee to select justices for the Supreme Court. They have to get 7, this is my understanding, they have to get 7 votes. So what's happened now, and that sounds fine, and it's always been, there's been some left-wing and right-wing Supreme Court justices, but the left got control of this at some point, and they vote as a block. Effectively, they get to veto whoever is coming in to be a Supreme Court justice. So there's become a lot of nepotism. They all come from the left wing, and there have been some abuses. And so Israel, while it does not have a constitution, they have these laws called basic laws. At some point, the Supreme Court has ruled, and again, this is based on my understanding, and I'm not a lawyer in Israel, so there's plenty of videos out there that you can watch. If you go to JNS, Jewish News Syndicate YouTube channel, you'll find videos there of Caroline Glick, Jonathan Toobin, and a bunch of other people that are talking about this. There was, I think it was Jonathan Toobin or Tobin, interviewed Ruthie Bloom, who now writes a column twice a week in the Jerusalem Post. She's always on the last page on Friday, right under the editor's column. She's conservative, religious, and she did a great interview this week where she kind of laid out like there are people here that are trying to tear us down. Now, when you tear us down, tear down the country, if you talk to people in Israel, people say, "Oh no, it's not a left versus right thing," and you'll see people when they're marching against the government, which they say is undemocratic, even though it was democratically elected according to the rules, and there was no allegation that there was any kind of election fraud or anything like that. It's just people don't like the result, and just like in our country, people don't like the result, so they're trying to tear it down. if I find the video, I'll try to play it here tonight while I'm talking, but I doubt that I will. There's a video, I'll just tell you about it rather than try to jump back and forth between the browsers. There was an interview of Ehud Barak. He used to be the prime minister. I think he was the defense minister as well. And in many respects, he is a bit of a war hero. But he has become, I would say, a man of the left. Now, people would disagree with that. But he was doing an interview just the other day in the UK. You can go to the Chatham House YouTube channel, Chatham, Chatham House YouTube channel, and get his interview. Or you can look up like Caroline Glick's Twitter account, and she got the video. And in it, he says, look, this is what's going on. We have found out, and there were studies done at Columbia University, that if you get 3.5% of the people in the country to challenge the government, they can take the government down. And it's clear that a lot of what's going on, it's not everybody who's opposed to judicial reform, but many of the people who are opposed to judicial reform are doing it to tear the government down. They do not like Netanyahu. And my guess is that there's two things that they're concerned about. They don't like Netanyahu, and they don't like the conservative, religious, Zionist, Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox parties that form Netanyahu's coalition. And the concern, and I've had friends tell me this, that their concern is that they're going to come in and they're going to enact Torah law in Israel, and we don't trust them. They can't do that. And this is the problem that we have here in the United States. You always hear this comment that people make is, you can't legislate morality. Folks, the only thing people do is legislate morality. Every law is based on someone's moral judgment. So, for example, that certain people should be taxed more money than other people. That's a moral judgment. That's somebody's morality being put into law. So the people who say you can't legislate morality are the ones who turn around and legislate their morality. And so people are upset. And the way Israel's structured, they have this crazy parliamentary system. It almost does not make any sense to me. And you have to make a certain threshold where you get at least 4 people. And what's happened is that to form a coalition, you never get a majority, very rarely. You never get a majority, so you have to get other parties to come into your coalition. But to get them to come into your coalition, you have to make concessions to them. And so the question then becomes, how many concessions are you going to make? And so the concern that people have is they don't want judicial reform because they're concerned that with the religious parties in this coalition with Netanyahu, that they will enact some kind of strict religious Torah-based law. And people don't want that. Israel is largely secular. But this is how the democracy works, and they were democratically elected. And as somebody told me today, that we just we got a majority, and they don't like that we got the majority. And the concern is that without the Supreme Court being in control of the left, that if they do enact these laws, there's nobody to put brakes on the legislature. So there's been some proposals in the legislature that they could overturn Supreme Court decisions by a simple majority. I think they've backed off that. There's been some other proposals kicked around. They're having meetings right now to work this out. Herzog, who is the president, which is a largely ceremonial office, but he was a member of the left Labor Party. He came out a few weeks ago and he said, we need to slow it down. We need to compromise. And then it's almost like somebody got to him, or he stuck his finger up in the wind and said, if I'm ever going to have a political future here in Israel, I've got to come out against this thing. And he came out strongly against this. So there's protests going on. There's thousands. I was talking to people driving in Jerusalem on Monday. They said, it took them a couple, 3 hours to go 3 kilometers in the city. Other places in Israel are perfectly normal. It's just like, some people say everything is melting down, everything is falling apart. I don't know that that's true, but many people seem to be people look at things based on where they are. So, as I said to somebody the other day, we were sort of talking back and forth about this, and they said, well, people in Israel tell me that things are pretty normal where they are. And they are, but they aren't. And I said, I'm sure that people thought Atlanta was pretty nice until Sherman came through in the Civil War. So the problem is that it is, I think, an existential threat to Israel. I do think things are very dicey. I do think they could go easily go another way. Part of this, though, is to to break up this coalition, to tear down the government, and to have another election, which would be the sixth election in the last 3.5 years. And that's the goal. So, for example, you see here in the headline this is from yesterday's Jerusalem Post, or today's Jerusalem Post. There's a couple things going on. So on the left, you see part of this coalition government. Ben-Gvir's militia will sabotage de-escalation. Ben-Gvir is part of the coalition, conservative. I think he's the Interior National Security Minister. He's been given the ability to form a National Guard. And this has been a talk of a lot of people in Israel, is we need, like U.S. has, we need to have a National Guard in Israel. Amir Avivi, a friend of mine who runs the Israeli Defense and Security Forum, this has been one of the things that IDSF has been talking about since they came into existence. On the other side, you see another thing that's going on. Biden's refusal to host Prime Minister sparks crisis with U.S. in what I think is a very unusual move. Everybody in the world that doesn't like Israel is jumping on this as an opportunity. And so you see a lot of Israel hatred, even among Israelis that really don't like the state of Israel. They're jumping on this because what they would like to do is tear down the state of Israel. And that's part of what some of the people on the left want to do. It's not everybody who opposes judicial reform, but there's a lot of people that want to tear down the state of Israel or shrink it back to its pre-1967 borders, which are called in Israel called the Auschwitz borders. If we go back to those borders that we had before the 67 war, we will be destroyed. One of the problems that's been, and there's been strikes, for example, on Monday, Ben Gurion Airport closed nobody could leave the airport. I think they were bringing flights in, but the airport was shut down before the airport was shut down, so people couldn't leave Israel. Hospitals were not seeing anything but extreme emergency patients. And people were really concerned. As I said, I was talking to people driving in Israel on Monday, and they were concerned. They said it's chaos. There's 100,000 people protesting over at the Knesset. So it was then, I think it might have been Monday, that Netanyahu essentially came out and said, maybe it was Sunday, said, we're gonna put a hold on this for 3 months. Now, some people say, well, they're just going to come back in 3 months and redo it. They're having meetings. Nobody will compromise. They won't compromise with us. We won't compromise with them. And everything's going to be a big, big problem. So, but the unusual thing is, here comes Biden, as if Biden knows what's going on. I mean, did you see his performance the other day? He goes out to do a talk about the children and people who had been killed at the Christian school in Nashville, and he's making jokes about ice cream. This is a sick. Even if he's not demented, he is a sick human being. This was disgusting. But now Biden, as if he has the moral capacity or the moral vigor to do this, he's weighing in, oh, Israel, you got to stop this judicial reform. Like, since when do we get to tell Israel how to run their democracy? But this is what, and I know that the people that were in the Obama administrations are behind all of this, and that's why I call it the Biden administration. And I think who might be sort of pulling the strings in the background. That's just my opinion. It's clear that Biden can't be doing this. But they're coming out, and Blinken is saying, we got to do this. And the other thing that's happening, and this is where I think I would be most concerned, is that many reservists have decided that, well, we don't like what the government is doing. We don't like the way that they're doing things. So we're going to have to, we're not going to show up for our service time in the reserves, in the IDF, in the Israeli Air Force. So a lot of the pilots have come back, or pilots and others have said, we're just not going to serve. And I was talking to people associated with the IDSF today, and I said, this is something very concerning to me. And they said, yes, since when do we, as soldiers, get to decide that, hey, we don't like the way the government's going, so we're just not going to show up? This is not, Israel's had mostly left-leaning governments since its inception. I think as it was explained to me today by a friend in Israel, the person who's been a rabbi, he said, listen, what happened when Israel was founded was that David Ben-Gurion was a secularist. And so most of the institutions that were set up in the government, the courts, the legislature, that type of thing, were set up by secular people. And they sort of thought, well, it's never going to change. It's always going to be secular people in charge. But the country has grown increasingly more religious. And you can see sort of a parallel to what's going on in the United States, whether Trump's the best person to be leading a Christian coalition. There was an ascendancy of the religious right in the country under Trump. And the people on the left, they hated it. It's the same thing that's happening in Israel. They don't like the religious parties. And listen, I've been in some ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods in Jerusalem, and I don't feel comfortable because it's like they make it very clear that I don't belong there, because compared to them, I look very different. But this is the way, countries have very diverse populations and religious orientations and that type of thing, and you try to make it work. But it's very concerning, especially when the soldiers and pilots and the reservists say, we're not going to show up because we don't like the government. And I asked somebody who's been in the military, and I said, what are you guys doing about it? And he said, well, what they're going to do is they're going to have a demonstration in Tel Aviv. I think it's this weekend, where they're going to say, hey, listen, we're going to retake our oath that we made to support and defend the nation of Israel. And we're going to invite everybody to join us. And I think it's a brilliant move. So we'll see how that goes. But it's very concerning what I see happening. Things are melting down. I think things are in a very tenuous situation. But to most people in Israel, it's like when the BLM riots were going on here in the United States, my life was pretty normal unless I went down to the areas where the riots and demonstrations were taking place. So I think that you're going to see, a lot of people in Israel say, well, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the beef is. My life is pretty normal. And as I said this to a pastor friend, listen, Atlanta might have seemed pretty normal until Sherman got there during the Civil War, and then things looked really, really bad. So that's where we are. I'm getting a terrible echo here. I'm going to have to change from StreamYard to some other format. So that's Israel. it's a pretty big deal. The other thing I wanted to talk about briefly tonight, and by the way, if you have questions, type question in all caps. Try to save it towards the end when I say, okay, it's time to do your questions. And I'll try to remember these. And so, Ramona, if you could redo your question again, copy it and paste it when I say it's time to do questions. So the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was this AI stuff. This is very concerning. I have a whole bunch of videos. I'm going to save them for Sunday for the most part. I'll just sort of recap what I've seen and what I see going on. This artificial intelligence thing seems to be spinning out of control. I played a video a few weeks ago. Let me see here. I'll pull it up if you want to go back and look at my hang on, I have to. So it's a video by a guy named Eliezer Yudowski. And he's a futurist. And you remember the video I played of the guy, they're interviewing him, and he said, listen, it seems like they're summoning demons in this whole artificial intelligence thing. He's been very concerned about what he sees going on. And he said, so the solution was that we put a demon summoning device in everybody's home, or most people's homes. Like he means Alexa or some of these things that listen to everything that goes on and that sort of thing. And they're listening to everything that goes on anyway, but this is one where you put it in because that's what they're going to do. And you can just say, Alexa, I want you to do this. We don't have one. We've shut those off on any of the devices we get that have those, but I don't know if they're still doing it in the background or not. It's pretty hard to be totally private. But it's very concerning what's happening in this in the area of artificial intelligence. So Saturday morning, Sunday I will play a clip of Bill Gates. Bill Gates has weighed in, and he says, this is a very seminal moment with artificial intelligence. I'll play the clip on Sunday. I'll spare you the playing it twice. And in Microsoft, Bill Gates is not part of Microsoft anymore in terms of managing it, but Microsoft has put $10 billion into artificial intelligence. $10 billion. I mean, that's huge. But Bill Gates is like, he even expressed some concern about things that are going on. And now we're getting into this. So there's an organization called the Future of Life Institute. Here, let me show you okay, so now why? Hang on a second. Okay, here we go. For some reason, I'll tell you what, I think people see that you're on and they start hitting you, the bots and attacks start hitting you. Because I sit here, I practice this, I go through all the things that I've worked on. I can see my screen's freezing up and everything now. At least it looks like it's freezing up to me. And I don't even have hardly anything open. Okay. So here's a group called the Future of Life Institute. And it says here, steering transformative technology towards benefiting life and away from extreme large-scale risk. And I don't know if this is a new organization. I'd have to see when this organization was formed. But they came out with an open letter and said, pause the giant AI experiments. So when I was in Israel in December, that's when I first heard about ChatGPT 4. Jonathan Metzger, he's a investment financial guy in Israel, I think very wealthy, especially big on the Abraham Accords and that type of thing. He's saying, listen, we have this stuff, ChatGPT. I mean, it's the fastest growing app in the history of all these apps. And he said it there, and this was paralleled what the Neuralink presentation had been of Elon Musk's company, talking about, listen, we're going to, and this is where it sort of concerned me from an end times Bible prophecy standpoint, because we know that Satan is the great imitator, and that one of the messianic signs that Jesus had was, listen, the lame walk, the blind see, the deaf hear. The disciples of John the Baptist came and said, listen, are you the one or should we look for another? And he said, you tell John the Baptist, the lame walk, the blind see, the deaf hear. But when you looked at the Neuralink presentation, there was a parallel as to what they did. It was the lame walked. And I believe that Jonathan Metzger even used that terminology in his talk in Jerusalem. Maybe that's what I heard. I'd have to go back and look at the video. It's on the Israeli government press office, Christian Media Summit, some of the videos from that the conference that I was at in Jerusalem are on the website, on YouTube. But this is very concerning. That was ChatGPT 4. Now they've come out with GPT 4, which draws from an even larger body of knowledge. And again, these are large language models, but now they're starting to get off into, and this is what they've released to the public. So who knows what they've done behind the scenes that we don't know about yet. And it's very concerning. So a bunch of people, the signatories are up to 1,741, paused giant AI experiments in open letter. And the question is, I mean, who signed this? Well, you go down here and you see people like Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak. I mean, look at the first guys: Yoshua Bengio, founder and scientific director at Mila; Stuart Russell at Berkeley; Elon Musk; Steve Wozniak, one of the founders of Apple; Yuval Noah Harari. Essentially, what they're saying is we need a 6-month moratorium on developing this. But listen, is China going to stop? I mean, seriously. And so now this is a problem. So this guy who I played the clip of a few weeks ago, Eliezer Yodowski. Let's see when I played that clip. Let's see. So it was an interview that he did on February 20th, and it would have been in my update on February 26th. So if you want to go to that, it's about an 8-minute clip. I could play it now, but just go back to my update from then, and you can sort of fast forward through YouTube and find it. And he was the one who talked about summoning demons. So today he wrote an article in okay, so why hasn't this switched over? I have the article. There we go. Pausing AI developments isn't enough. We need to shut it all down. This is Eliezer Yudkowsky. Oh, good grief. Yeah, I'm going to try to just go to Rumble. This is a bit more people are tied into YouTube. So let me pull this up. I have no idea why this happens. There is no way that this should be happening. I have a share screen function. Okay. My browser is frozen up. Okay, so let me just tell you what it says. It's an article in Time Magazine, just came out at about 6 o'clock last night. And he says, listen, pausing AI developments isn't enough. We need to shut it all down. That's what he says. He says, this six-month moratorium would be better than no moratorium. I have respect for everyone who stepped up and signed it. It's an improvement on the margin. I refrain from signing it because I think that the letter is understating the seriousness of the situation and asking for too little to solve it. Now listen to what he says. The key issue is not human competitive intelligence, as the open letter puts it. It's what happens after AI gets to smarter than human intelligence. Key thresholds there may not be obvious. We definitely can't calculate in advance what happens when, and it currently seems unimaginable that a research lab would cross critical lines without noticing. And he goes on to say, essentially, that this AI stuff is could end humanity in very short order. On Saturday morning on CBS, there was a excuse me, folks. I'm trying to it's ridiculous. This is so frustrating. So let me just talk and we'll see what happens. Listen, folks, I apologize. This happens all the time. I practice these things. I record them on a private YouTube channel. Everything works fine. When I go live on YouTube, everything crashes and freezes. I do stuff with other people like Tom Hughes a week ago, no problems. But when I'm doing my own live stuff and I have a high-speed internet connection, so I do not understand it, and I'm going to try to do this. It's very frustrating, and I appreciate you being patient to deal with it. But back to the artificial intelligence. What happens if we cannot control this? What's also tied into this is that there's this push for central bank digital currencies. You're going to see this grow even more in the very near term. Let me see if I can. I'm going to shut some things down here and see if that changes anything. Unbelievable. And I have to use Chrome to record this thing because of the way StreamYard is. But there's also this problem in the economy. The banks have big problems. I was just reading articles in the Wall Street Journal today about commercial real estate is starting to collapse in many places. Housing's collapsing in the West, and the banks are at risk. I don't know what will happen. I would say you need to pay attention. You probably need to spread your money among some banks. I think the community banks will be okay, but if they decide they're going to force everything into the big banks, then the community banks are not going to be okay, even though a lot of those banks are owned by the depositors. They're the shareholders of the bank. But, I mean, do you think Janet Yellen and this Powell guy that runs the Federal Reserve, that they care about that? They don't really care about that. So I think the push will be to sort of get us into a digital currency. And we've talked a lot about that in the past. And I see a comment here, just remain, that's probably why the Antichrist will do signs and wonders stuff. And that's true. This artificial intelligence stuff is moving so quickly. In fact, there was let's see if I have it here. Well, now what happens is Adobe is updating while I'm trying to. That's probably why everything froze up. So. This is so frustrating. I'm more frustrated tonight than I think I've ever been when I tried to do one of these things. This is unbelievable. If you don't see what I'm seeing going on here. So we have this thing, they're pushing for central bank digital currencies. And there's a system coming out called FedNow that comes online, which is part of, it's being touted as a payments system. But listen, you can go, there's a 2018, which I would show you if I could get my Adobe Acrobat Reader to open up. There's a paper that the Bank for International Settlements, that's like the central bank of the central banks in Switzerland, came out, and they said that the whole basis of the central banking system was a payment system. So now they're coming out with this digital payment system, and I think they're advancing, bringing out central bank digital currencies. And we know from the guy at the Bank of International Settlements that they wanted this to do a central bank digital currency because they want more control. And remember, there was Pippa Malmgren at the World Government Summit last fall who said, hey, well, we need a digital digital bill of rights. Well, they talk about that, but nobody ever comes up with a digital bill of rights. And so this is very concerning, the way this is going, and it's happening very quickly. On the other hand, too, the other part of this is you have China and Russia entering into an agreement. China and Russia, Xi in the meeting with Putin, you can find the video online, he said, this is an opportunity that only comes along once in 100 years, and that's to collapse the dollar as the central bank digital currency. And that's what they want to do. So they've entered into these agreements. With China and Russia to make exchange of commodities and digital yuan. And that's not even really good for Russia. Saudi Arabia is signing on to it. Brazil has joined on to it now. So if you think that what happened with the election in Brazil was just an accident, part of it was to bring this into the BRICS countries and destroy the U.S. And when that happens, it's going to be very bad. You need to have prepared, you need to have some food stored up. I don't know when it's coming. I was watching Dave Walsh today on War Room. Maybe it was a clip from yesterday or today. And he said there's starvation coming because the greenies and the government are collapsing the energy system, the energy delivery system. That's also leading to collapse in fertilizer, and it's fertilizer imports that have allowed fertilizer inputs that have allowed farmers to become much more productive than they used to be. So as I was sitting here thinking about how I wanted to talk about things tonight, it's like everything is connected and everything is converging. and everything is accelerating. Everything is happening very quickly. And so everywhere you look, you see this in governments. You see these conflicts in the government. For example, I talked on Sunday about France. France is in a crisis. Israel, I think things are like, for most people, it seems normal, but the government is in a crisis. And the government could fail. Now, they'll just have other elections. I mean, one encouraging thing is you see everybody at these demonstrations carrying Israeli flags, which means they seem to be committed to the country. But which country? What kind of a country? A shrunken country that really can't defend itself? And they're having a lot of problems. I saw there's a left-leaning blog called The Cradle. I read it because, one, they always have good pictures. And they have sort of a black and white picture of Xi and Putin, but they have like red notebooks, but the rest of it's black and white. It's just a very interesting way they put up their videos. But there was a report on their blog today that Russia has now approached Iraq about all of these, they want to use Iraq for an air corridor to transfer things to Syria. Now the question is, why do they want to transfer things to Syria? I don't know. They're having trouble with the fact that they can't go over Turkey. Turkey's not allowing them to fly over Turkey to deliver things to Syria because Turkey's got a beef with Syria. But Turkey is, they're in turmoil too. They have elections coming up. Erdogan's position is very risky. It's just that everywhere you look, things are in turmoil. Things are accelerating. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to take some questions now, just a couple, and then we'll finish this. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. I think maybe I just need to stop doing the live updates because it seems that the systems don't like that. I'll just have to record them and edit them in advance. And the reason I don't do that is just so you know that that editing and that type of thing can add hours to getting an update up. So the live is sort of a way to do it without having all that extra time, but it's just very frustrating. So anyway, any questions? So, okay, I don't see any questions, and maybe there's a delay and that's not good. So look, things are very difficult. So here's a question. Okay, we'll do this question. This probably won't even show up. My browser's completely frozen up. What happens if the Pope dies? That's a good question. Who's going to replace him? There's a lot of people that have thought that Francis is the false prophet. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. I happen to think that he's not. I think the Pope of the Catholic Church is a significant player in the end times, whoever that might be. But, Francis is what, 86, 87? That's, and so you add in this period of time before the second coming, and we know that the false prophet is alive at the time of the second coming. So we know it's probably at least 7 years. So he'd be in his 90s. I just don't, you kind of have to factor the age into this. And a lot of people talk about Erdogan. Erdogan is 2 days younger than I am. And so sometimes you wonder, how long any of us has in this world. In fact, this past Monday would have been my father's 100th birthday. And that's kind of weird to think about that. It makes you feel a little bit old knowing that, he was 30 when I was born, so you can kind of back guess my age. But the Catholics have plenty of, as one comment says here, they have plenty of heretics in waiting, and they'll just throw another one in there. It won't make any difference. But I do think the Catholic Church is a significant player in the end times, just because they have, how 1 billion people that follow the Catholic Church or whatever. At least that's what they claim. And so that's what's going to happen. Somebody also asked a question about narcissism and psychiatric disorders. I think that we're going to see this increase. I'm very concerned when I see some of these congressional hearings about fentanyl and now this, what's it called, trank, sort of a tranquilizer in fentanyl, which is like, it like flesh, it'll eat your flesh. And people are doing this, and we have this problem. We have all these people concerned about misgendering and using the proper pronoun, but there's 100,000 people in the United States died last year from fentanyl overdoses. And a lot of times these are not drug addicts that deserve it because they're out there. They just take a pill and die. They don't know. Somebody gives them a pill. They think it's a drug. They're going to get high, and they take it and they die. And lives are ruined and destroyed. I'll also talk about Sunday. Be in prayer about this Transgender Day of Vengeance that's supposed to take place on April 1st. They said show up at the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, and wear a mask. Trank, yes, Suzanne, thank you. It is a nasty, nasty drug. And this thing is sweeping over the United States. It's very, very troubling. We're watching what I think is the beast system coming together. I don't know exactly what that looks like when all is said and done, but it's coming, and the foundations of it are being put in place. And now with this artificial intelligence, even some of the people that are involved in it, they just, they're concerned about it. They're concerned that this could end humanity. There was a guy, he's one of they call him the godfather of artificial intelligence, I think. And they interviewed him on CBS Saturday morning. I'll play the clip on Sunday. And they asked him some questions, and he said, he made a very interesting comment. They said, well, what do you think is going to happen? What's the chance that this artificial intelligence thing is going to destroy this artificial intelligence is going to destroy humanity? What are the chances of that? And the guy says, well, somewhere between 0 and 100%. I really don't want to say. And that's one of the guys who's the foundations of this. I have some comments, play a clip on Sunday of Sam Altman, a couple clips of him, and some interviews he gave recently where he talks about the same thing. Like, well, I think we'll control it. I think we'll be able to get it under control. So here's this open letter, like we need to take a break. But then here's one of the guys who's really one of the big thinkers in it, Eliezer Yudkowsky. And he's saying, like, I don't think we can do this. I don't think we can ever make it safe. And if we're wrong, humanity is over. So I saw somebody make a comment today, like, people that do prophecy updates, everything in the world is a sign that we're in the end times. And so can I say 100% certain that we're in the end times? I'm way in the high 90s. But the thing is that all of these Bible prophecies, the stuff will happen in a real world. And we're supposed to be watching. Jesus tells us to watch. So we should be watching. But the problem is that, nobody really wants, they want to talk about Bible prophecy, but they don't want to admit that maybe we're at this time. And I think we're at this time with the convergence and acceleration and all these things that are going on. And that's going to unfold in a real world. And remember the line that I use from the Hemingway novel, I think it's The Sun Also Rises. How did you go bankrupt? And he said, well, I went bankrupt in two ways, gradually, then suddenly. And I think this is how this Bible prophecy thing is going to play out. It's going to be gradual, and then it's going to be sudden and done. And I think we're at that time. So I think that I'm going to terminate this. I appreciate your patience. And I'll try to maybe just do it on Rumble the next time. I don't have the codes to do it on our app. That's the problem. And I got to get those. And you need to understand that it was funny. Somebody showed up at church recently, or I met him at a dinner, a local dinner for an organization that we support. Good organization, Relationships Under Construction. And they said, well, they didn't really want to come to FBC because they didn't know how they could handle a church of 2,000 or 3,000 people. I'm like, what do you think FBC is? I mean, I think we averaged 72 people a Sunday last year. We're not that big. And so we're all volunteers. We don't have these huge budgets and that type of thing. I don't have a staff. So we try to do the best we can. So look, pray for us. Pray that we'll get the kinks worked out. And on Sunday, I have a staff, and that's why things go pretty smoothly on Sunday. But we live at this time of convergence and acceleration. That is clear. Artificial intelligence, turmoil in Israel, turmoil in the United States. I don't know what's going to happen. There are a lot of things that could happen. I don't think the people are doing it because they're trying to clean up the system. They're going after Trump and other people, their political opponents. And the thing that concerns me is the viciousness that they go after people. Like, they don't care if they destroy people's lives. I think I saw a guy from J6 who has been in jail waiting trial for over 800 days. 800 days awaiting trial without bail. This shouldn't happen. Netanyahu has these cases. Whether you think they're valid or not, I asked somebody in Israel when I was there, how long is this case going to go on? These cases will go on for at least 5 years. 5 years? They're political then. That's the only reason a case goes on that long, is it's a political thing. So listen, we'll talk more Sunday. We'll talk more about artificial intelligence. We'll talk about this thing in Nashville. I'm very concerned about this. This person, this female, does this. And of course, now everybody's like, well, was it a female or just identified as female? It's just, and now this person is being treated by the media like she was the victim. The pastor of that church lost a 9-year-old daughter, his only daughter. She was killed. That longtime school custodian was killed. The head of the school was killed, trying to defend people. And all they want to talk about is you misgendered the killer, and now the killer's a victim. Very, very concerning. So anyway, thanks so much, and I'll talk to you on Sunday.